This is a study of chapter 17, the great book of Kings 2, and it describes and details the final demise of the kingdom of Israel, which included the 10 tribes to the north, begun by Jeroboam I, who erected golden calves in Dan and Bethel, and every king thereafter continued that practice. This kingdom has been in existence for 269 years, and they have had 19 kings, all of them evil in the sight of the Lord. 1. In the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, began Hosea the son of Elah to reign in Samaria over Israel 9 years. And of course, he reigned 9 years, but he conspired against and killed the king ahead of him, who was Pekah. 2. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, but not as the kings of Israel were before him. So he continued the calf worship, true, but maybe was not quite as bad as those who went ahead of him. One thing that he did, Hezekiah, when he came to rule in Judah, he opened up the temple and he planned a Passover celebration. He sent messengers to the north to invite persons from Israel, and Hosea let the messengers in. That kind of a thing had never happened before. 3. Against him came up Shalmaneger, king of Assyria, and Hosea became his servant and gave him presents. Yes, he gave him pay to hold off. 4. And the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hosea, for he had sent messengers to So, king of Egypt, and brought no present to the king of Assyria as he had done year by year. Therefore, the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. And he is going to begin a siege against Samaria. It began in 613, according to Bollinger, and ended in 611 BC, which means it went on for 3 years. Now, besieging a city meant that the city was totally surrounded. Nothing was allowed in, no food, no water, no provisions of any kind, and no one was allowed out. And true, Hosea had paid Egypt and had tried to stop this tribute to Assyria, and it will cost him greatly. 5. Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years. And as I said, 613 BC to 611 BC, this began. And this king of Assyria did not complete, the carrying away of the 10 tribes. Sargon, who succeeded this king, did take over and complete the mission. 6. In the 9th year of Hosea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away into Assyria and placed them in Halah, in Habar, by the river Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes. Now, we learn, and I will explain as we move into the lesson, that he did not take all. he took 27,290 away from Samaria into captivity. Now, whom did he take? Well, of course, he would have taken the cream of the crop. He would have taken military leaders. He would have taken civic leaders. He would have taken important personage, and not the whole nation. Remember that who is called the Assyrian, the Antichrist, that's another name for Satan, and he will be taking people into captivity called deception. 7. For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt, from under the hand of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and had feared or worshipped other gods. Well, they worshipped golden calves, and they had idol worship, and no one in the leadership out of the 19 kings ever figured out that the prophets were sent to them to teach them, to help to try to turn them around. And then all the bad things that happened, if they could have just taken down those golden calves, it would have made all the difference. 8. And they walked in the statutes of the heathen, whom the Lord cast out from before the children of Israel, the kings of Israel which they had made. So the Canaanites were those peoples that the Lord cast out, and they took up with the Canaanitish gods and with, of course, those golden calves. 9. And the children of Israel did not right against the Lord their God, and they built them in high places in all their cities, from the tower of the watchman to the fenced city. Asherah, those grove places, fertility goddesses worshipped, and the tower of the watchman to the fenced city, it meant everywhere, out in the country and in the towns. 10. And they set them up images and groves in every high hill and under every green tree. And that, of course, that every green tree is for emphasis. The idol worship and the illegal bad worship was all over the entire land. 11. And there they burnt incense in all the high places, as did the heathen whom the Lord carried away before them, and wrought wicked things to provoke the Lord. And they did exactly as the Canaanitish nations that occupied that part of the world until it was promised to them. 12. For they served idols. Wherefore the Lord said unto them, Ye shall not do this thing. And they are, of course, the reference here is to the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt have no other God before me, and thou shalt not have graven images. And it's also a reference to Leviticus 26 that describes the blessings and the cursings, and he has told us there, have no other gods. 13. Yet the Lord testified against Israel and against Judah by all the prophets and by all your evil ways. Keep my commandments and my statutes according to all the law which I commanded your fathers, which I sent to you by my servants and my prophets. And the point is that even Judah was not entirely without fault. They maybe weren't as bad as the ones in the north, but they were not good. That word seers, I want to point out to you that Strong, Dr. J.L. Strong, that is a prophet of God or a prophet of a false god, but it is not a fortune teller or a soothsayer or any kind of a meaning like that. It means a prophet. 14. Notwithstanding, they would not hear, but hardened their necks like to the neck of their fathers that did not believe in the Lord their God. And that happened back in the early part of the departure from Egypt. They complained, they were stubborn, they wanted to go back to Egypt. And in Numbers 14, we're told that they tempted God 10 times. And the adult generation were doomed to wander for 40 years, and none of that generation got into the promised land except for Caleb and Joshua. And remember, they were part of those spies who went to spy out the land, and all the others said, "Oh, we can't possibly go in there. Why, we're like grasshoppers and they are giants." And Caleb and Joshua said, "Oh, but we can prevail." And those two were the only of that first generation of persons who were in adulthood who got to move into the promised land when it was opened 40 years later after that wandering. Verse 16. 15. And they rejected his statutes and his covenant that he made with their fathers and his testimonies which he testified against them. And they followed vanity and became vain and went after the heathen that were found round about them, concerning whom the Lord had charged them that they should not do like them. They were told not to intermarry, not to mix, and to follow his commands. And that particularly there was to be no marriage between these heathen persons and those persons who came out of Egypt, because as we have seen, when a marriage with the heathen, they will bring in their gods, as in Jezebel. She brought Baal worship in Israel, and Solomon, with all his wives and concubines, they brought in heathen religion, and Solomon even set up altars to them. And this angers God. 16. And they left all the commandments of the Lord their God and made them molten images, even 2 calves, and made a grove and worshipped all the host of heaven and served Baal. That is the 10 tribes to the north. They served Baal, and they had those calves, and they had other graven images. First and second commandments disobeyed. 17. And they caused their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire and used divination and enchantments and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of the Lord to provoke him to anger. Now, that kind of worship, Molech was one of these gods of the Canaanite people. And when you pass a child through the fire, that means that they sacrificed children on the altar. And divination and enchantments, fortune tellers, and persons who are into that kind of thing are called a familiar spirit, and they're evil spirit. And remember that Saul, instead of seeking the advice of the one true God, sent to the witch of Endor, who was a familiar spirit, and he wanted her to bring down Samuel so he could speak with him. In other words, he was asking for a seance. 18. Therefore the Lord was very angry with Israel and removed them out of his sight, and there was none left but the tribe of Judah only. So the Assyrians carried them away, and he said there were none left but Judah. Remember that the tribe of Judah in the south also included the Benjamites, who were their neighbors, and every tribe was assigned so many Levitical priests. So the Levites belonging to Judah and Benjamin were there. And then when they erected those golden calves, many of those Levites left. And so these persons are what is left, and what is today anyone who is a Jew. Now, everyone who is a Jew is actually from the seeds of Abraham. You can be a Jew if you happen to live there, just as you could be an Arkansan or a Virginian or whatever. You might be of a total different, you could be Chinese, but if you live in Virginia, you could be a Virginian. So that is what is to remember. 19. Also Judah kept not the commandments of the Lord their God, but walked in the statutes of Israel, which they made. Think about Athaliah. She was the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel of the 10 tribes. She married the king of Judah, and she did a great deal to lead the tribes of Judah and Benjamin away. And finally, at the end, she killed all of her grandsons, or so she thought, and took the throne for 6 years. However, one little boy was rescued, Josiah, and Joash, and he would take the throne. And of course, they led Athaliah out away from the temple. She had the temple closed up, and they had the little boy in the temple because she didn't bother to go in to the temple. So that was one of the ways that Judah went astray. 20. And the Lord rejected all the seed of Israel and afflicted them and delivered them into the hand of spoilers until he had cast them out of his sight. So Israel is gone, and they were led away into captivity. They are called the lost tribe. They are not lost. They simply do not know who they are. They were led over the Caucasus Mountains, and they were called Caucasians. They went to Western Europe, and from Western Europe, many of them settled in Canada and the United States. 21. For he rent Israel from the house of David, and they made Jeroboam the son of Nebat king, and Jeroboam drove Israel from following the Lord. And yes, he did. He was that very first one who put the golden calves. And a prophet that was sent to Jeroboam, remember, he rent his clothes into 12 pieces, representing all the tribes. And once Jeroboam rejected the Lord and put the calves into for worship, the Levites left, so he began to appoint his own priest. Anyone could be a priest, and certainly not from the house of the high priest. 22. For the children of Israel walked in the sins of Jeroboam, which he did, and they departed not from them. Never once did they ever fail to worship those golden calves. 23. Until the Lord removed Israel out of his sight, as he had so said by all his servants the prophets, so was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day. And I said that earlier, that there were not everyone, but there were 227,290. And how do we know that? We know this from a cuneifoil that was done by Sargon. It's a writing system. It is not a language. It is not an alphabet. It is written in syllables, and it does document a number of these acts of Sargon. And some of these cuneiform writings are in the British Museum, some are in the Louvre in Paris, and in other museums over the world. So that is how we know that. We know that from his own writing. He took the best and the brightest, and they lasted, but they came to an end. And those ancient tablets, of course, tell us that number that he took. Some of them may have returned, but no one is lost to God. And unfortunately, the teaching of this carrying away and who they were is not much taught. But God knows who the lost tribes of Israel are. 24. And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon and from Cuthah and from Ava and from Hamath and from Sepharvaim and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. And they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. So they brought in heathen colonists from all of these places, and they did not revere God, did not know who God was. And Hamath may have rung a bell to some of you. Those are, that is the land of the Kenites, the offspring of Cain. 26. Wherefore they spake to the king of Assyria, saying, the nations which thou hast removed and placed in the cities of Samaria know not the manner of the God of the land. Therefore he hath sent lions among them, and behold, they slay them, because they know not the manner of the God of the land. So this is a mixed people, and Isaiah 78, Isaiah chapter 7, verse 8 prophesies the power of Ephraim would be broken, and Ephraim was the largest of these 10 tribes, and very often the 10 tribes were not in power anymore and did not occupy the land. And this verse, it said they didn't know the God of the land. That's heathen logic. Ben-Hadad, who came in once against Israel, and they had success. They said, oh, well, they're gods of the mountains, so we'll just see if we can get them down in the plains. So these heathen persons assumed that a nation had its own gods, and gods could be over a particular kind of geography even. 27. Then the king of Assyria commanded, saying, carry thither one of the priests whom you brought from thence, and let them go and dwell there, and let him teach them the manner of the God of the land. So they're going to take back one of the priests that they took to Samaria. And remember that all the really good priests had already gone to Judah. So this would have been a failed priest, and what will he be able to teach them? 28. Then one of the priests whom they had carried away from Samaria came and dwelt in Bethel and taught them how they should fear the Lord or revere the Lord. Now, where is he? He's in Bethel, where one of the golden calves resided. 28. Howbeit, every nation made gods of their own, and put them in the houses of the high places which the Samaritans had made, in every nation in their cities where they dwelt. So they just had their own gods. And the men of Babylon made Succoth-Benoth, and the men of Cuth made Nergal, and the men of Hamath made Ashima. Now, Sukkoth, that should ring a bell. Sukkoth was the booths, the festival of the booths, and when they made that first encampment, when they came off from Egypt, they had booths, the festival of the booths. And this Sukkoth here in this verse, Sukkoth-Benoth would have been like a daughter's booth. It would have been a little enclosed a thing that could be carried by 2 people inside a curtain. And it was all just made-up gods. Everyone went as they wished. 31. And the Avites, or those from Ava, made Nebals and Tartak, and the Sepharvites burnt their children in fire to Adrammelech and Anammelech, the gods of Sepharvaim. That would be related to Molech worship. They sacrificed their children, and the Abites, that Nebhaz and Tartak, are none other than a dog and a jackass. Very worthy things to worship. Verse 32. So they feared the Lord, and made unto themselves of the lowest of them priests of the high places, which sacrificed for them in the house of the high places. So it said they revered the Lord. They acted like they did. They wanted to get rid of those lions that he sent in. but anyone could be a priest, and the sacrifices would have been illegal and would not have pleased the Lord at all. 33, and they feared the Lord and served their own gods after the manner of the nations whom they carried away from thence. Well, can you have two gods? No. Thou shalt have no other God before me. Unto this day they do after former manners. They fear not the Lord, neither do they after their statutes, or after the ordinance, or after the law, and the commandments which the Lord commanded the children of Jacob, whom he named Israel. Remember that Jacob's name was changed from a supplanter, the meaning of Jacob, to be Israel. That became his name. To this day, that would have been to the day of that writing. And remember the promise to Abraham that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars and as the sands of the sea. Look around at all the persons who went over the Caucasus Mountains, and that is true. But the Lord who brought you up out of the land of Egypt with great power and a stretched out arm, him shall ye fear, him shall ye worship, and to him you do sacrifice. That's the way he would want it. And the statutes, and the ordinance, and the law, and the commandments which he wrote for you, ye shall observe to do forevermore, and ye shall not fear other gods, or that fear should be translated revere. Do not worship other gods. But the Lord your God ye shall fear, and he shall deliver you out of the hand of your enemies. That promise stands today. Howbeit they did not hearken, but they did after their former manner. And verse 41 to complete this study. So these nations feared the Lord and served their graven image, both their children and their children's children, as did their fathers, and so they do unto this day. Exodus 34:14, thou shalt have no other God, and God said that his name is jealous with a capital J, and he means it. So at the end here, they are trying to serve two gods, the real God, mainly to keep those lines all away from them, and also sacrificing children to the likes of Shemosh and Molech. And, well, do we have any idols today? Do we have a house that takes all our time and energy to make that mortgage payment? Do we have a sport activity or anything that gets in the way of our worship of the Lord? This is a very beautiful chapter about the demise of the tribes to the north, and of course it contains many lessons for us too. This video is an outreach of the Essex Methodist Church and the Crossroads Global Methodist Church in Dexter, Missouri.